Have you ever seen a human being murdered by a piece of paper? Not a bullet, not a knife, just a tidy, signed document with a government seal. March 1st, 1969, Miami. Jim Morrison staggers onto stage, dead drunk, an hour late. A year and a half later, a Florida court sentences him to 6 months in prison for something he almost certainly did not do. You think they locked him up for exposing himself? Wrong. The jury acquitted Morrison of lewd and lascivious behavior. That's the felony. The big one. The microphone oral sex simulation? Not proven. Even a politicized Miami court, desperate to turn him into a scarecrow, had to throw its hands up. No evidence. Conflicting testimonies. Jim might have unzipped his fly, or he might not have. Then he screamed at the crowd, "You're all a bunch of slaves!" 6 months in prison, $500 in fines. Judge Murray Goodman handed him a real prison term for misdemeanors, for profanity and indecent exposure. The system couldn't convict him for what they wanted, so they buried him for the form, not the substance, for being drunk, for breathing too loud. The system wasn't hunting a monster. It was finishing off a clown. And the most disgusting part didn't happen in the courtroom. It happened in Los Angeles, November 1970. Morrison, convicted, waiting on appeal, knowing they could snatch him any second, walks into the Doors workshop. He's recording L.A. Woman. He's singing Riders on the Storm. And according to studio legend, he's lying in a coffin while he does it. Not a metaphor, a literal wooden box. Morrison crawled inside and wailed into the mic. "Into this house we're born / into this world we're thrown." This isn't rock and roll romanticism. This is a report from a living corpse. A man with no future. He couldn't tour. They wouldn't let him leave the country. Nothing to wait for. The system didn't put him in a cell. It handed him a life sentence of waiting. And he burned out in 2 years. Official cause? Heart failure. In Paris, July 3rd, 1971. Real cause? The system squeezed until he popped. Now here's the detail that will make your eye twitch. 40 years later, Florida Governor Charlie Crist, 2010. A fan attorney named David Diamond rocks the bureaucratic boat. The clemency board meets. They vote unanimously. Yes, let's pardon Jim Morrison. 39 years after his heart stopped in a Parisian bathtub. 41 years after that concert. Why? Who does this help? Jim is dust. This pardon isn't justice. It's the final insult. The cherry on top of a 40-year-old joke. It's like an executioner returning to the grave half a century later to say, "You know, we thought about it. You weren't entirely wrong, but everything's rotten anyway. Fine. You're forgiven." The system didn't manage to lock him up while he was breathing. It did something worse. It forced him to sing, with the cell door creaking in the background. And when he turned to ash, it waited 4 more decades to be magnanimous. A clown show worthy of the Doors. I'm not telling you this because I pity some dead rock star. I'm telling you because it's a perfect blueprint of how power breaks a man without laying a finger on him. They didn't need to imprison Morrison. They just needed him to know they could do it at any second. And he broke. Not in a cell, in a studio, lying in a coffin. The Miami verdict wasn't a victory for the law. It was a victory for fear. Jim Morrison didn't lose because he was a bad poet or a washed-up drunk. He lost because he was the only one on that stage who didn't realize the whole thing was just a play. The judges, the prosecutors, the governor with his 40-year-late pardon, they all knew their lines. Do you still think freedom is just not being in jail? No. Freedom is not being afraid to open your mouth. Jim Morrison opened his.
And 6 months for an unzipped fly? That wasn't the punishment.
The threat was the punishment. So, what's hanging over your head right now?